Good evening, everybody. Thank you and welcome to Foxborough's Board of Selectmen September 18, 2012 public meeting. I'll go through the agenda briefly. At 7 o'clock, as we always do, we have citizens input. And with us tonight is Jack Autholet and Jonathan Turner for a small presentation. And then we'll go into topics not necessarily anticipated during the 48 hours advance notice period. At 7:05, we'll give a chairman's update. At 7:15, KBA Architects and Bill Caspera will be presenting some town hall repair options and a program. At 7:35, a public hearing is continued for the 99 Restaurant for a new office director, issuance of stock, transfer of stock, and new stockholders. At 7:45, Selectmen Walsh and Mike Johns are going to be presenting a veterans pay update. At 8:05, the NRCC, which is an Neponset Reservoir Reclamation Committee, is going to give us an update, and that update is on the Class 1, what do they call it, the Response Action Outcome, the RAO, that's been going on at Neponset Reservoir. At 8:20, we had invited the craft organization, spearheaded by Dan Murphy, to come in to discuss the new development plans in concept for the Patriots Place. At 8:50, we have executive session to discuss union negotiations, and there's 3 or 4 action items. So it's a little bit of a long agenda, so we're going to try to move quickly through some of them. Linda, do you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As part of citizens' input, actually, Jack, if you're ready, would you mind going up first?
No.
That'd be perfect.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it. I must confess, I'm trying to catch my breath because just before I came up here, there was a knock on the door. Total shock. I met my 4-month-old great-granddaughter from L.A. for the first time.
Congratulations.
They're standing there at the door. There's an inherent danger surprising somebody my age. But quickly, let me take you back to 1961, midpoint in the post-war building boom following World War II, when Foxborough doubled in population. That year, the town named its first building inspector, Whitmore I. Turner. We have his grandson here with us now.
Welcome.
We called him Pete. He had the distinction of writing building permit number 1.
Wow.
And it was for home for Robert L. Weber, Bradford Street. It became Bradford Avenue, a single-frame dwelling. That year, he actually wrote 244 permits, one for 1.9 million in new construction, 147,000 in repairs, and interestingly, that same year, they formed a committee to study erecting this building, a combination town hall and police station, because town business had been conducted in rented space since the townhouse fire of 1900. So there's 1900 to 1961. Well, Pete filled that post from 1961 to 68 as our building codes evolved and new homes covered the hills and plains. The position changed to building commissioner, 69 to 82. But that was just part of Pete's public service. Assessor, 62 to 2006. Fence viewer, 72 to 81. Industrial Development Commission, 75 to 82. Municipal Building and Planning Committee, 88 to 2009. Permanent School Building Committee, 97 to 03. Town-owned Parcels Review, 04 to 2010. And Permanent Municipal and School Building Committee, 2003 to 2012. Both as a town employee and volunteer committee member, Pete anchored the inspection and building corner of Town Hall for a 51-year total commitment to the community, and he served with distinction. So Jonathan will tell you why we're here.
The request that Jack and I have, we'd like to present before this board tonight, is for approval to have a plaque made listing Pete, my grandfather's, proud record of community service. It would be ready for mounting in the either refurbished and expanded town hall or the replacement town hall, whichever the case may be, and we could have an unveiling at that time. In the meantime, I would like to to give my grandfather a sense of just how much his commitment to public service is appreciated, just so we can know that the people of Foxborough would like to thank him very much.
Fantastic. I have a few words, but if you want to go around the table, Linda, do you have anything to say?
Just well-deserved. I can't think of anybody that I'd like to have the name up here and all the things that he's done. And I only got to know him recently, but I was born in '61, so he's been doing his time, and hopefully
Wow.
I'll make it as long as he is, and then some. And I worked with him on the Doolittle home with Jack and stuff. And,
He was 47 years on the Board of Trustees.
I was just going to say, that was for a very long time too,
Yes.
right? Yes,
Yep.
yeah, so, absolutely, whatever you need from us,
Thank you.
definite.
Yes, it's a nice honor that Mr. Turner is going to get. I mean, I've been in town for over 32 years, and Pete Turner is always, his name has always been around. And it's well-deserved, and I hope this is the beginning of recognition for many of our longtime employees.
Thank you very much for bringing that forward. It's a great honor for your grandfather, and thank him for his service.
Jack, how much was that permit fee?
You better look that up, probably 50 cents at least.
No, thank you very much. It's an honor to be part of all this. It really is, and we all, not just the board, but the town, we appreciate all these people like your grandfather that really put focus on helping the town become a better place. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you. The duration, the commitment, the longevity, second to nobody that I know in the municipal, so fantastic, and thank you. And as Linda said, whatever we can do to
Yep.
expedite that.
Well, I should note, too, that Emily Bonin dug this out of the archives for me less than an hour ago, so just to make tonight special. But what we'll do now is we'll get some estimates, we'll set up a fund, give the public an opportunity to weigh in with some donations if they so choose, and then just keep you posted as we go forward. But if we have your blessing on this, I think a 93-year-old, very dedicated public servant would go to bed tonight with a smile on his face.
Absolutely,
You have our blessing.
absolutely.
Thank him for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, Jack.
And we thank you very,
you very
very
much.
much. I think we go this way.
And go play with your little granddaughter.
Now, if there's anyone under citizens' input, we just ask if you come to the microphone. It is being recorded on camera and at home, and just introduce yourself for the record. Sure. Some people are shy, maybe they'll come up after.
Okay, I'm John Anastasi from 209 Main Street, Foxborough. And I'm actually here to voice some concerns regarding the Country Fest event. And I wanted to make it here to the last meeting, but I had some car trouble. I ran into Jim right after the event, had some issues, and he suggested I come up and talk to the board. So I want to thank you, Jim, for suggesting that, and I want to thank the board for allowing me to speak. I have some items here from the reporter that was printed, some regarding custodies. This particular event had 617 custodies, people taken into custody, in comparison to a couple of previous events that happened a few weeks ago before the Country Fest event. 66 custodies for the Springsteen concert and 32 custodies for the Monday Night Football game. So compare that to the two-day festival, two-night festival for Country Fest. It's pretty substantial. I live up in that area, so I was directly impacted again this year. I came to the application meeting back in March, I think it was, when they were applying for the two-night permit, and voiced my concerns along with people from Walpole. The town administrator actually came down, and the chief of police, because they had some issues with traffic. So, again, there was a plan supposedly to be presented, and it was presented, and they put it into place, and regarding the traffic. And this year, as a resident, I went to the Foxborough High School scrimmage game, and that was an away game, came home about 12:30, and experienced 4 hours of traffic half a mile from my house. I was stuck in front of the Stop and Shop. And I actually had to shut my motorcycle and my vehicle off because I was just getting nowhere. And I overheard the manager talking to the deputy sheriff saying, "See, I told you it was going to be bad." So traffic, to me, in my opinion, wasn't really any better than previous years. So that's an issue. I just compare this event as like a Woodstock 2-day Woodstock festival infused into a town of 17,000, and on a Saturday, you know, residents are committed to their families and their household events, their family events, soccer games, football games, etc. And it's just such an inconvenience. You're just gridlocked. You can't get around the town. Most people, or some people in here, probably experience too. The law enforcement agencies, they did a great job, you know, with their resources, but they're maxed out. Let's face it, you know, we're a town trying to act like a big city at times when these events happen, and the law enforcement guys, they were just maxed out. They did the best they could, and I overheard I actually spoke to one of the deputy sheriffs, said he worked 2 16-hour shifts. That's a lot. I had the unfortunate experience of going up to the police station, going up there, and due to some family items that had happened resulting from that event, and that's not the reason why I'm up here. I'm just concerned about the safety and how the town handles this whole event. But I was really surprised and shocked to see that there was a tent and a table and portable toilets and everything was set up there with the expectation of a large quantity of people that were going to be taken into custody in advance. I mean, that's preparation, but that right there should tell residents, you know, what's going on with this event. Why do we have to have that kind of a setup here? The public service building is brand new, and we can't even handle this kind of processing of custodies, which, in my mind, should never even be an item. So the other thing, too, is there is a loophole. In my mind, I'm calling it a loophole for access to get to this event for people, for ticket holding persons in particular, underage teens. You can get into this event. You don't have to have a ticket to get into the stadium, on the stadium grounds. You just have to claim that you're going to the retail stores or theater or whatever you choose. You can park your car. I have a ticket here that I obtained that's direct evidence saying that you could park up here, but you have to you've arrived prior to 6 o'clock, and you can leave your vehicle in the lot until 9 o'clock. So they give you a window to spend some time up at the retail, but the teenagers come over there and they end up parking their cars, and they can just walk over and start tailgating and drinking underage, and that was pretty much how they do it. That's a loophole, and it should be concerned with the town because it's just easy for underage drinking. It's just something that we need to address. So really, in conclusion, I just ask that the town can seriously rethink and reconsider and consider the fallout that happens from this event when the application comes around next year. I mean, personally, Friday night, I didn't see too much of an impact as far as traffic goes, which was okay. But Saturday was a whole different story. Again, it's just overbearing. I think the fact that we've picked up the UMass football games, not that it has any relevance, but town's picking up extra revenue from those games, and I think that we should reconsider this 2-day festival permit. It's just way inconvenient for the town, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Anyone else under citizens' input? Nobody? I'm going to give just a couple quick updates. The Foxborough Veterans Service Department and the Veterans Service Advisory Committee are hosting, again for the second year, the National POW MIA Remembrance Day, and it's this Saturday at 4:45. If you went to it last year, you saw the Mass One Rolling Thunder and the Legion Riders, and it's quite a show. It's memorable. They'll have the missing man table narration read again. And if you are around it, it's worth the hour. So it's 4:45 on Saturday at our Common. I wanted to give a quick shout out as to the Foxborough Planning Board, who's wrapping up the final stages of their master plan. And some of us had gone to that, and I usually see about 30 or 40 people that would come to these sessions. And what the planning board did is they reached out with their consultants. They went door to door to businesses. They went through email and websites to get as much information from the people as possible. Had a series of discussion groups and presented last week the close to nearing completion of the master plan. And it's quite a document. You can see it on foxboroughmasterplan.com. And if you get a chance to look at it, if nothing else, look at the vision statement. It was quite insightful to see people across different groups having the opportunity to say where the town is going to go and have people listen. So it is a living, breathing document, as the planning board says it. They did a fantastic job. So take the time to look at it. Everyone paid for it, a lot of money for it, so don't let it go to waste. And lastly, I reached out to Charlie Masterson. If you know Charlie, he did his last show behind the scenes last week. And I think he did over 600 shows with a span of 11 years. Hundreds of people, residents had come with different groups and sat with him. It's an unbelievable piece of literature, documentation for the town. So we're thankful for Charlie and for Foxborough Cable Access TV for hosting it for the 11 years. I asked Charlie to come and sit with us next week for 10 minutes, just if you want to call it a debriefing or a way to say thank you, because it was a phenomenal era that he had, and I haven't seen it done by many local cable talk shows that go to that level. So if that's okay with the board, we'll have him on next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for my citizens' input. Couple minutes into it, but is Bill here? Yep. You want to come up to the table and with KBA Architects? Bill's been working with different town people and consultants to address town hall, if you will, on the different options.
Good evening.
Thanks, Bill.
I really envy Pete Turner. 250 permits in 1 year. I dream of those days. But he deserves a real congratulations for the time he's put in. Mr. Pecos had asked me to put together a priority list of repairs for Town Hall, some things that we possibly could do to improve this building. And with the help of Joe Milani and Michael Kuhn from KBA and consultant from ARC Health, who put together a report on the interior environmental assessment of this building, which isn't in your packet, but I have it, certainly make it available to you. So with those reports, those documents, we're going to present to you a list of repairs, what can and can't be done in a logical building code requirement format. The health assessment, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not a Chicken Little scenario. We did air quality tests on mold, asbestos, carbon dioxide, radion, and lead. And the only thing that's in this building that is really of a health concern, if disturbed, is the lead that's in the attic. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. It's up there. But that's certainly going to put a damper on what we can do with some of the systems that are up there. So that'll be included in this. With that said, again, that the lead is the issue. Unfortunately, most of the lead is in my office, so I can't lick the floors apparently. But it does mitigate down a little bit through the ductwork. But we'll get into that. So what these gentlemen will do is they're going to show you a priority list of repairs, which includes everything from the roof to some of the systems that need to be installed in this building. And there are certain thresholds that the building code requires, state law requires, Architectural Access Board requires, that as you get to a certain dollar amount in repairs, you have to do other things automatically. You just can't willy-nilly go through it and not trip requirements. And that's the purpose of the building code, is to bring it as close to compliant as possible with what you do. Some of the things, for example, we need a roof. And you'll see that as, I think, first priority. We can do a roof with no problem. You put it on, we're not disturbing anything on the interior. But you do other things, such as if we have to replace the windows, which are a necessity in this. I mean, with the wind we were having an hour ago, the curtains were blowing. But that would require relocation of staff because there is asbestos caulking in all the windows. So that's what we're just going to show you, what we can and can't do. We'll do it simply, and then we'll just open it up for some comments on you. But with that, we're going to do a PowerPoint and explain anything. So, Mike, take it away. Joe?
Thank you. Joe's going to present this. I wanted to reiterate, that this is really not about renovating the building per se, not changing the workspaces. It's really a question of just repairs, the things you have to do to fix things that are broken right now, and how that plays through with, as Bill said, the plateaus.
Oh, yeah. Just trying to get a microphone to you. Thanks, Randy. Can you? No.
Thank you. So we're going to get started.
As Bill mentioned, there are thresholds that you encounter within the building codes that require you to do further upgrades in the building. I know one of the more confusing aspects of the report that we delivered June in 2011 was the references to the code. It's confusing to everyone. And we tried to make this, as simplified as we can. A little tangle there.
We should put cable outlets down on this list.
Yeah. Part of the prioritization of the repairs in the building that were included in the report back in 2011 were a variety of issues in the building that were required both for health reasons and for code reasons. We looked at those, prioritized those based on what we felt needed to be done first, what needed to be done for continued occupancy in the building, what needed to be done for long-term and short-term maintenance in the building. The first threshold that you encounter when you're doing repairs in a building with the accessibility board is $100,000. That requires you to renovate and make accessible one entrance in the building, one toilet room in the building, and one water fountain in the building. This threshold in the accessibility code doesn't require you to make the building code compliant. It just requires you to provide this minimum compliance based on that minimal amount of work. This threshold is usually typically easily passed during construction, and a lot of buildings have these elements already accessible. This building, however, does not. In this building, as you'll see in the next plan, we'll need to renovate the entrance, both bathrooms, and the water fountain in this building to make it compliant. The next threshold that's encountered is also for accessibility, and based on the assessed value of this building, once the work exceeds $469,950, you would need to make the entire building and the site accessible and in compliance with the AAB, and including the first three items that are on the list. This is based on requirement in the accessibility code for construction that exceeds 30% of the assessed value of the building, and that number is based on that 30% value. It doesn't matter where you get the work. It doesn't matter if the work is for repairs, for renovations, for painting, for whatever. It's the value of work done in a building to upgrade that building required by permit. It is over a period of 3 years, so you take any work that you've done in the past 3 years or project to do in the next 3 years, and you combine that to see if that exceeds that value. The tricky thing is that if you don't want to get too close to that value, because any change order that occurs in a project also could trip that requirement, and that leads to a large unexpected cost in the building. So as part of the prioritization of repairs, we've also looked at that as a number to give you some guidance on where you might want to put some of the repairs of the building. Another separate but still equally as important threshold that is surpassed is for sprinklers. In the fire code, it's a two-pronged kind of requirement. Whether you exceed 33% of the assessed value of the building in any renovation projects, or 33% of the area of the building has renovations performed on it, you're required to upgrade the entire building and make it fully sprinklered. That threshold is an aggregate cost that's over a span of 5 years at the discretion of the fire department. It exceeds the cost and the threshold requirement of the AAB, but it is over 5 years. So again, you have to go back 5 years from the date you're expecting to get the permit for whatever work you're going to be doing, and then project that to make sure that you can perform that work without triggering. Typically, if you trigger either the accessibility or the fire protection, one or the other goes, because they're so close in the percentage of the assessed value of the building. Next. Existing floor plan of the building we're in now, we're sitting right over here. As I said, next one, Mike. The triggers for accessibility by the AAB would require that you correct the vestibule, the toilets, and the water fountains. The toilets basically can stay the size they are, but you lose a fixture in each. Instead of being a two-fixture toilet room that's multiple-person toilet room, it now becomes a single-use toilet room where only one person at a time can use it. It's actually much smaller than is allowed by code for a building this size, especially for a building with an assembly room of this size. But except for enlarging the toilets almost to the outside wall of the building, that's the only thing that we could do and still provide accessible toilet rooms. The water cooler, the water fountains have to be made into you've seen double water coolers, the high-low version, so that people with different disabilities can use it. That has to be upgraded. And the issue with the vestibule is that the existing wall came to about here. It didn't have the proper clearance between the two doors. That has to be moved back, and the biggest problem is that it now lessens the size of the counter service at those two offices. The next threshold for accessibility with AAB would require you to upgrade the entire building. The major element in doing that is the elevator. In this instance, although the other issues for the $100,000 threshold are distinct, we're not showing all of the issues that occur with bringing the entire building up to code. We just couldn't do that. It's signage, door accessibility, hardware, multiple issues occur in the building that are outlined in the original report, and the cost analysis that tells you what you'd have to do. But the elevator placement is the biggest problem because of the structure of the building. This building is constructed out of concrete planks that span from the front of the building over a couple of concrete beams in the basement to the back of the building. And locating a hole in those concrete planks is extremely difficult. We've had a lot of problems in the past in different buildings, simply coring small holes for ductwork to pass through, because once you start penetrating the cores of those precast planks with the rebar and stuff in them, it really gets to be tricky structurally to reinforce them and make them stable. So one of the locations that was available to us was this old stair, which is now your copy room. It doesn't eliminate usable office space, which is at a priority right now. And it also is in a place where you have a flat slab, because that was ported separately out of this plank system as a flat slab for the stair. The other option would have been to put it in this location, because there's also beams that are held up by 4 columns in those locations that isolate that for the framing for the vault, which is beside it. Unfortunately, that location would take about 150 square feet away from the revenue office, which we thought was at a priority right now, and we didn't want to do that. So as a recommendation and a suggestion only, that's a possible location the elevator could go. It is a very expensive proposition, as well as all the other handicap accessibility renovations that would have to take place. Just want to mention, too, that we quote the AAB in this instance only because the AAB is a Massachusetts State Building Code. It's enforceable by the building inspector. You hear a lot about ADA. ADA is a federal guideline. It is not enforced by the building inspector. However, it is just as important. Public buildings should be in compliance with the ADA. They were supposed to be in compliance with the ADA over a period of time. And a lot of these renovations should have been performed in the past, because public buildings need to be accessible to the public. However, this is not enforceable by the building inspector. It's really enforceable by civil statute. Next. The last issue in the cost triggers would be obviously sprinklering the entire building. We're showing the entire building, in shade here just to show the extent of it. It actually would be both floors, not just the top floor. It requires you to take down ceilings, to put in the sprinkler piping, insulate the attic, and do some ventilation issues. It's an extensive process also. Next. Based on our discussions in the last presentation that we had, we did prioritize the list of recommended repairs, short-term repairs that we had presented in the report. Primarily out of the list of probably 35 or 40 repairs, these were seen as repairs that were the most important, both for short-term maintenance of the building and occupancy of the building. Replacing the roof is seen as the priority issue, which can lead to many other problems in the building. The cost trigger that's formed by the $100,000, as you can see, would be easily reached by either roofing replacement and some other small repairs, or replacing the exterior windows, which we all see as being another issue. That $100,000 threshold would add another $65,900 by our estimate to correct the entrance, the toilet rooms, and the water coolers. That, added with the next 4 items in our priority list, would bring you to the cost trigger for the 100% upgrade for AAB. Automatically, in essence, that triggers the upgrade for sprinklers throughout the entire building automatically. And then 7, 8, and 9, which are fairly well important but fall to the bottom of the list, replacing the mechanical system, including air conditioning, replacing the antiquated electrical system, and adding an electrical generator to back up for the building to run during catastrophic events like a hurricane or whatever. One thing I didn't mention during the course of this is the IEBC, the International Existing Building Code, which is what is governing construction in the state of Massachusetts for buildings under renovation. This replaces a section of the building code, was adopted in Massachusetts last year. It's fairly new. This has a sliding scale of renovation and how it's applied to the building. If you look in the outline that I did previously for you, it has 4 levels of renovation, repairs, alteration level 1, 2, and 3. Depending on the level of renovation that you're doing, the square footage and the area of the building that you're renovating, different levels of renovation upgrade are necessary in the building. For example, if you're doing small renovations of the building in alteration level 1, you only have to modify and bring up to code the issues that you're dealing with in the immediate work area, in the room you're working in. If you go up to level 3, which is modifying more than 50% of the floor area of the building, you have to do other things like upgrading all the exits in the building to make them code compliant. You have to do seismic studies, as this is calling out for, in both level 2 and level 3. The seismic studies we've done in preliminary studies for as part of our last report. But because it's on a sliding scale and it's difficult to say based on this priority list what you would do as part of any renovations, I can't say that you would need to do those studies or have to renovate the building seismically for, say, putting in windows, because it doesn't exceed the square footage requirement in the building for that trigger. However, down this far into the building renovation for these immediate items, I would guess that over a short period of time that these items would trigger that requirement for that study to be performed. And if it does trigger the study to be performed, based on our previous review of the building, you would have to upgrade the building for seismic also, which is reinforcing the exterior of the building with steel frames or other methods to get it to be stable in an earthquake.
If I could point out to the board, I believe the short-term repair list that you have in your packet may be a little, is it the same one that's on the board there?
It's $2,027,000, yeah.
Right,
600.
and the same amount of columns?
No, we took out 2 of the columns for clarity. We didn't.
Okay,
put the
all
columns
right.
in.
What Joe also did, what I asked him to do was, which of those repairs would require relocation of staff? And that's important because that figure doesn't show up. Again, for example, the windows, relocation of staff. We couldn't be here while that's abated. Obviously, if we were going to re-insulate and do some work in the attic, we'd be out of here for a while. We have to relocate. So there's no, that cost is not in here, but it's significant to do that. And the board would have to consider, do you replace the windows and relocate us for 2 weeks while that's done? And what type of interruption of service would that do for the community just for 2 weeks for that? Or at that point, do you go the full boat and say, okay, we've got modulars, or we're somewhere else, do we take care of all of it? So, for a longer period of time. So, I mean, those are important things that I think you can see, and the point of this was to say that, you know, we just can't rubber band and duct tape this place together. There are requirements, and that's what needs to do, we need to do to just to repair this thing. And there are systems here that are failing. We need to address them. So,
I think one thing we need to point out that Michael stated early in the presentation was that this is only a part of the repair list that we outlined in the report previously, if you chose to go the repair route rather than doing a renovation or a new building. It's the highest issue, most immediate need repairs to keep the building occupiable. But it also, it only repairs. This doesn't touch the basement at all, providing any more usable space in the building to accommodate the people that work here. It doesn't there's no space planning involved to make the spaces more efficient. And there is no increase in space to allow people to have more room to work. That would be a separate thing, changing the cells downstairs, the storage rooms downstairs, or any place up here as part of a renovation project is not included in that cost. This is only for repairs to keep the building moving forward.
okay.
And hopefully we hope that it's a guide to allow you to plan, if you plan to go this route, plan on repairs and give you some idea of where these cost thresholds lie and how you can trigger them, so you can plan for that and not have it come up as a surprise.
Are there any questions we can address to the board?
Open it up for the board. Any questions, discussion?
Jim, could I just give you a kind of summary on
The reason I commissioned this study was because the board has asked the question in the past, why we don't make repairs. Why are we basically sitting here allowing this building to fall apart with each passing year? And as I know the board understands, because you're in here, it is getting worse. It's leaking more. We have, later tonight, if we get the thunderstorms and the weather that they're predicting, you will probably see the roof leaking, and you'll see water running across the floors downstairs and coming in the windows and all sorts of things. And it gets worse with each passing year because the deterioration to the window sills, to the roof, and everything is continuing. The dilemma is, the proverbial catch-22 is what our architects and Bill have just laid out. As we spend the money required to make the repairs to halt the deterioration of the building, we subsequently trigger other thresholds which require to spend more money, and you can't really do anything meaningful to preserve the building without getting into the multi-million-dollar scenario that they just laid out. And when you're all done with the multi-million-dollar scenario, you basically still have an inadequate bad building, which is the reason why my predecessor, Andy, and I have not come to the Capital Budget Committee with those kinds of repair requests, because I think it's both of our feeling, as well as Bill's, the architects, the building committee, Bill Yukon has spoken to the board before, that to spend those kinds of dollars to make the building sound, to prevent the further deterioration, is throwing good money after bad, because what we really have to confront is that this building is badly in need of replacement. It has got to be replaced. It simply makes no sense to spend a couple $1 million fixing the building and then having a building which is still disgraceful in appearance and completely inadequate to the needs of the people who occupy it and completely inadequate to the needs of the public. So I can't in good conscience bring forward those requests for those kinds of money, because it simply makes no sense to take the taxpayers' money and spend it on a poor investment. By the same token, we can't really sit here and continue to do nothing. We've been doing this now for 2 years, since the report was initially made. And so, I guess what I'm saying to the board is, I think it's time to fish or cut bait. We either need to get those big dollars and stop the further deterioration, if it is your thought that you wish us to be in this building for an extended period of time, or we need to lay this case before the voters and have them decide if they want to provide the money to replace the building.
Okay. One from the board?
Well, I mean, we're beating this thing to death, as far as I'm concerned. I've already told the board how I felt numerous times. It's time to move on, build another building, start the process. Twice I've asked for the money to be appropriated to start the process of planning and move forward, and then we'll have to get it done sooner or later. I mean, we had the same problem with the fire station, which was way worse than this situation that we're in now, and so we need to start the process. That's the way I feel, and nothing will change your mind. This just reiterates everything I know. So it's these building codes are set up just for this reason, so that we bring everything up to compliance with the safety of people. If we didn't have these codes, then there would be no protection for the employees or the people that visit the building. There'd be no fire protection, there'd be no handicap updates, there'd be no elevators. That's why we have them, so time to move forward.
Any disagreement or other discussion?
It needs to go to town meeting, that's all I know.
Yeah, I mean, we kicked it around, and I thought it was last year when it was unanimous from this board, if we maintain it or renovate it or knock it down and build a new one. And the study indicated at the time, there's no historic significance to the building. It's not a, people, I think we crossed that bridge that in what you're presenting us is $2 million worth of just put a Band-Aid on it and address the next level when it comes. But at the end of that $2 million Band-Aid was just pushing it off to make another decision. I think the shortcoming last time was how we were going to pay for it versus is it worth doing it or not. I think we crossed the is it worth doing it or not bridge last year.
I think, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, with your permission, we wanted to make this presentation tonight as the first step. And if the board is indeed in that place where, your feeling is that it's time to make the decision, then what we'd like to do is present you in 2 weeks with the finance plan. Elements of the old one, but we have some new opportunities that we didn't frankly have a year ago that make it, I think, more palatable to the board, more palatable to the AdCom, and ultimately more palatable to the voters and to the community, and more likely that we could, get the support that's needed to do it. So if that's all right with the board, we'll plan to do that in a couple weeks, and we've been working on that for a while, obviously. I'll be meeting with Lorraine's Asset Committee,
Asset Review
Town
Committee.
Asset Review Committee, and looking at the things that we can, surplus property that we can put before you to potentially sell, and I think we'll have a plan that's reasonable and well thought out with, by the way, alternatives, so that if you say, well, we don't like that piece, we'll have some ideas for, well, we could supplant it with this.
Now, you're not talking about for the spring town meeting or for the?
My hope is that the
I mean,
board.
the special town meeting or the spring?
My hope is that the board would decide to either, A, endorse appropriating the architect fees to do the final design, take that out to bid, and then in the spring, present the construction money, or do both now. It's really your call. It's been studied very extensively. We have a very good cost estimator who's done the estimates, so we feel the figures are solid and would be ready to put, with a little bit of work to update it, would be ready to put the entire issue before the voters in the fall, if that's what you wanted. Or we could just put the design money and then come back with the construction money in the spring. What I would not recommend is that we wait till the spring to do anything, because then I think we're sacrificing another entire year. And as I've said before, perhaps in more melodramatic fashion than I needed to, but I'll try to be more, less melodramatic and more factual. My concern is that if we continue to do nothing, something bad is going to happen, with the roof, because it's just very unstable. And I think we don't want to create an emergency by delay. We want to move as expeditiously as we can, and hopefully the roof will hang on for another year while we're designing. And then hopefully, by summer of next year, we'd be moving the staff out of the building into temporary quarters, or trying to stay in here for another year. I don't know how well that works, but that's a possibility as well while construction of a new facility begins.
Before, just quick question. You're talking about structurally and using phrases like, hopefully it'll last another year. I didn't see anything in the report that said this roof is going to fall down in a year. So I don't want to go in that direction. We've already been through the mold and the lead and the asbestos, and the sky's not falling in that. It needs to get done. But I don't want to start saying if it's not done in a year.
To replace the shingles.
The shingles, yeah.
The shingles.
Saying the terminology, it's a little, I think people figure that out quick if it's a panic thing. It's not a panic thing. It's the right thing to do in a process. And it's been going on for, a lot more than 2 years. So, to rush it for fall town meeting is a little problematic, for a special. I don't know yet.
I was going to suggest that we do it in two parts, that the last time we were talking about this, the idea was to have that design money approved so that we could get really nail down the costs, so that we would only be looking to finance we'd have a real amount that we could sink our teeth into in terms of that financial analysis, because then if we have those costs, it's clear what we need, and it's not a situation where we ask for X millions of dollars, but in fact we end up needing much less than that. So I would suggest we consider the two-part approach. Look at the design dollars proposal for the town meeting vote in the fall, and then wait till the spring for the building part of it.
Linda?
I just had a question. It's been brought up to me outside, but I know that the post office is supposed to be, relocating and only having a storefront there. I'm wondering, is that something that you folks would look into as a possibility to get that building, which is already, obviously accessible because it's not that old of a building, right? But it's not something that you'd be interested in.
I've had conversations with several post office officials who are involved in the real estate section, and folks in Boston that are at an even higher level. The indication from them is that the post office is unlikely to be in a position to decide if they're actually going to sell or not for some time. They're doing a study about relocation. I did have the conversation, if they did at some point make a decision, that I thought it would be a wonderful marriage between the post office and the town hall, to combine them, because they want the retail presence of the post office, even if they sell the building. The problem is, if we keep waiting, for some event to happen, and meanwhile we keep not making the repairs, and I think we're really at a decision point here. I think we've got to do something. I don't think.
So that gentleman from DC got back to you because
Yep.
he didn't return my
Yep,
email.
yep,
so
I spoke with him.
I thought he sent an email
He
to
sent an
everybody.
email.
Yeah, I
to
actually
everyone?
sent an email. I had an
Maybe
email
it
and.
went to my work, maybe.
That too would initiate a great deal of what you call build-out cost, Linda. That would not be appropriate the way it is at all. It would run into a substantial amount
Yeah.
of money to renovate.
Yeah, it's not we can't say with certainty what the build-out cost would be there. We know it's significant, it's in the millions, we know that. But we can't get in there right now because they won't allow us to go in to have our architects
we
do the
can't.
study, because they had
Well, I just
access
thought
to
if you were
postal
doing, if we were
facilities.
just talking about, options, that's what I thought we were talking about, was you were gonna give us some options, and I thought maybe if that was, I'm just asking if that was one of them, that's all, obviously.
I
it's
don't
not,
think we
so.
can seriously consider it, and the reason is because, I think you're at a point where at the special, we've got to make a move. If we wait another year, I just don't think that's responsible. So if we wait a year even to get the design money, to see if the post office is going to pan out or not. Let's say the post office doesn't. Now, we're another year behind. And I think the continued delay is causing the building to deteriorate, and I don't think that's responsible. We either need to spend some money and stabilize it, or we need to move on and go a different direction. But I don't think we can continue to do nothing.
So I think what the option is, using the feasibility study that Castle Booze and Associates did as the basis, if we go to fall town meeting, and the special town meeting for the permitting and construction document funds, that you'll have, at that point, you'll have a design, a fixed cost that you can go out to bid, and then in the spring, put it to the town voters to, you'll know the price then. But between the fall and the spring, the package that you've been looking at to finance it, whether it's selling town assets or cobbling things, that's going to happen between the fall and the spring.
We're actually looking to begin selling assets very soon. I think right after next week, we will have an auction, and we will begin selling assets, yes.
Fantastic. It's only been 7 years since we tried.
I'm sorry?
That's the most viable approach, what you're suggesting.
Okay.
Throw out the bid now, or set aside the funds for the study, putting everything together.
Jim, if
Go
I
to the
could,
next phase.
Good. I really think, I urge the board, and I'm going to make a motion that we allow the town manager and finance director to appropriate the roughly $500,000 to start the process and the planning for knocking this building down, making new plans for this exact location, and let's just get moving forward with this. I really think it's important to get started. It's not a building that you're gonna renovate. I do this for a living, and it's not gonna work out. And then what you have is, as you all know, Jane, change orders. It's not new construction.
Well, I don't think anyone's talking about renovating it. I
So
think-
let's just.
Where's the 500,000 coming from?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying, where's the figure coming from, the 500?
That's
Who
the
threw
figure.
up
They threw
500,000?
469.
The estimate was from the architects for final design, and I think they'd probably need to update that. But that was the estimate from last spring, roughly.
And roughly, it was 469, I thought, $469,000 for the plans.
Sounds about right, but I haven't looked at that in quite a while.
Right.
So, what's the fund, Randy?
Capital stabilization account.
And I would make a motion that we allow the town manager work with the finance director to take the money out.
We gotta go to town meeting.
We
That's
we
the
have,
500, we have to go to town meeting? I thought we had the authority to give you the money to
No.
do the planning.
no, it has to be a town meeting vote to appropriate that money.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought, I misunderstood.
I mean, we can vote
Nice try, though.
to
Hey,
support an article.
I love writing checks.
But however, I like your style.
No, I
Wasn't
thought,
going
where
very
this is
pocket,
coming
sorry,
from.
but.
all right, so, I thought we had, I
I think we can
misunderstood.
vote to support an article to go on.
We'll wait for the article then.
Well, we have to.
Initiate the-
Initiate an article, so that would be a good motion for you to make.
Well, I urge the
Wanted to.
board to support the, support, to take the money out of the capital stabilization fund, support it at town meeting, to start the process and hire a firm to design a new building for this location.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any more discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion?
All right.
5-0.
Thank you, folks.
You got one supporter. Who's that guy?
That's all we get, is one clap, come on.
Ernie,
I don't know who the gentleman is, but thank you, and he doesn't work here, so appreciate that.
He's an architect.
Somebody put the heat up.
It's very hot.
All right, what do we got now?
All right, we have a public hearing. Is representatives from the 99 Restaurant here? We have a motion to read, if you want to read that.
It's discontinued, or you wanna read
Yeah, it
it?
was already,
Just continue.
yeah, it was continued, but why don't we just read it quickly while it's coming in?
The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, will continue a public hearing to Tuesday, September 18th, 2012, at 7:35 PM in the Andrew A. Gala Jr. Meeting Room, 40 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, on application for new officer/director, issuance of stock, transfer of stock, and new stockholder of an annual all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license from 99 Restaurant of Boston, LLC, 4 Fisher Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts. All interested persons are invited to attend the hearing.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gregory DeMarcus. The DeMarcus office is in Lynn, Massachusetts, and we represent the licensee, the 99 Restaurants of Boston LLC, which is here tonight for an approval of assorted items related to a liquor license, related to the liquor license for the property at 4 Fisher Street in Foxborough. Due to a stock transfer at the great-grandparent level of the company. Essentially, all of the stock of one publicly traded company was bought by another publicly traded company, so that there is now another level of ownership at the great-grandparent level. The 99 was owned by a Tennessee publicly owned company known as O'Charley's Inc. And all of the stock of O'Charley's was bought by Fidelity National Financial Inc., another publicly traded company, under a process known as a tender process, which is regulated by the SEC. O'Charley's Inc. Also owned, in addition to the 99 restaurants, 2 other chains. So they had a total of 342 restaurants under 3 concepts located in 26 states. There are 61 99s in Massachusetts, which I think makes it the largest chain in Massachusetts. The purchase price and costs are approximately $225 million. Now, due to the complexity of the transaction and the number of restaurants involved, we instituted the inverted process where we went to the ABCC, and we had several meetings with the ABCC, and we got their approval. We got their approval before we've applied for the local licensing board's approvals. The grandparent level company is going to have a change of officers and directors, so that's why we're requesting tonight a change of officers and directors and transfer of stock. However, the manager of this restaurant is going to stay the same. I think her name is Pamela Abrantes. And the operation is going to stay the same, the hours are going to stay the same, the concept's going to stay the same, and really nobody's going to know that there's any real difference at the store level. This is just a transfer way up the ladder, where one publicly traded company, as I said, purchased the stock of another publicly traded company. So the hours, we're not requesting any change of DBA, hours, manager, any of that stuff. So.
Okay, so I guess in summary, from a very high level, there's paperwork, transfer of stocks, staff stays the same.
Right.
Hours, everything stays the same.
Right.
So this is a necessity because of the paperwork triggered by the state?
Yep.
Okay.
James? Is there a violation on file right now with the ABCC?
For 99?
Yeah.
No.
I thought I read that there was.
Violation in what sense? There were taxes owed, but those have been redeemed as far as I
There was
know.
one from when they did the undercover study in town. I thought it was in our information pack a couple of weeks ago. Am I mistaken?
Not within the last 2 years there hasn't. Prior to that, I
remember the
can't
last
say.
one, but I thought there was a recent.
I think that might be the one that's in our information packet this week.
But it's not 99.
Different restaurant,
99.
different.
No, I must be mistaken. I thought it was a couple months ago, actually. All right.
But you're saying that you know for a fact that there's no issues right now with the ABCC?
You were just there.
About that violation, I'm not aware of any violation. I'm not at all. I mean, this is the first I would hearing of that. As far as this process was concerned, there's a letter that you should have from Ralph Sacramone, the executive director, approving the paperwork in this transaction. But no, I'm not aware of anything, any violation.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the,
Well-
can we do one motion for everything?
Well, we gotta
We have to
close
close
the
the-
hearing.
Close the hearing, you're
Make
right.
sure there's nobody here that wants to say anything.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Do you want to ask, I think we need to ask before it's closed.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
This is a public hearing before we close it. Is anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this topic? For the record, nobody. Is there a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Motion-
Second.
Motion to close by Lorraine, seconded by Linda. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing?
Aye.
5-0. Open it up for discussion?
I just, thanks for coming in, Gregory. So many times, things like this that happen in the higher ups, we don't really hear about it ourselves, or we hear about it, it comes in front of us, and we don't have representation. It just kind of happens. So thanks for taking your time to come and explain in case, we had any questions. So I do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And the 99 here in Foxborough is well-respected. We just gave them an award for life-saving measures that they took upon a gentleman that was in cardiac arrest. So you got a great store there, so
Oh, thank
you
you.
can pass that
Thank
along
you.
to your higher-ups, but
I will.
I don't have any questions for them.
Anyone else? Okay. No more discussion? A motion?
So, motion to approve the application for new officer, director, issuance of stock, transfer of stock, and new stockholder for the 99 restaurant.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a
Thank
big
you for your
Jets
time.
fan. The last time I was
Yeah,
here, I
yeah.
saw the Jets lose 45-3, so it was a much pleasant.
I'm glad you saved that
Said that after the
comment. I'm
meeting
glad
closed.
you saved that
I
comment
waited
till
2 years.
afterwards,
I'd like to revisit.
Gregory. Yeah, I'd like to,
Revisit.
I'd like to reopen.
Maybe a Jets fan, but I'm not dumb.
You've got some paperwork in here, Mr. Chairman, to sign.
Just the chairman or everybody?
I don't know if there's 5 or just one for the, no, there's
Everybody.
5, I can see it.
Yeah, everybody. All right, we're actually a minute early, so if there's anyone from the Neponset Reservoir Reclamation Committee? you wanna
No,
come up
it's
to the table?
Selectman Walsh and Mike Johns and
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bob,
I'm
veterans.
sorry. I thought we were a minute early, but we're a little late.
Yeah, we're late, come on.
All right. Sorry, guys. I was giving you a plug early for the, you should have just waited. You could have done it yourself.
Thank you for the
Pass
plug.
those around that way.
So, we have been meeting after town meeting. It was asked that, we put together this group, to kind of investigate what we could do for our veterans that work for the town. Several members have been meeting on a regular basis. We're really not at the point that we would want anything to go on to the special town meeting. We're not ready for that yet, but there has been some progress in discussions that we've had. So I don't know, John or Bob, if you want to. Mike, I'm sorry.
That's why I
You know
have
what?
two first names.
Give me I don't know, a dag or something. My mom always said, don't trust a guy with 2 first names, but I don't know why I have this little block, and I just want to call him John. It's Mike.
My mom always said, don't trust a person who calls you by 2 different first names.
That
So,
too.
touche. So what you have in front of you is really a synthesis of notes taken over 3 meetings with an ad hoc committee, the second of which we met with Representative Barrows and Senator Timilty, which was suggested, and someone on the committee reached out to them. I think it was in the 3rd meeting that someone in the group said, asked, what is it we're trying to do here? And someone made the quote, make them whole and no net gain for the service member. And the group kind of agreed that seemed to be the intention of the law. The local option that the state presented is that someone who was being deployed and was making X number of dollars and then was going to lose a significant amount of that pay because of their salary in the military, the intention was that they don't lose their home, they don't go into debt, they don't run into problems by getting, going through day-to-day expenses. So, we thought maybe that captured the essence. And that the second part, no net gain, I think was a big part of the resistance and why a well-intentioned state-local option was not adopted back in the spring. So with talking to our legislators, they suggested that the only way we could do something other than adopt the local option was to do a home rule petition. Otherwise, we really can't change what they've presented. And so the group talked about taking some of the suggestions from the AdCom, from some of the citizens that stood up and spoke, and from what we sensed as the real things that stopped this thing from being adopted. So from the top, considering a cap on it. And we didn't go to any exact timelines or exact dollars because I think that's to be done by a future committee to be named to actually draft this thing. All we did was come up with some guidelines to move it forward. So a capped, we suggested something like $20,000 or what have you. Next, a cap on the amount of time that this benefit could be used for that single use, something like 18 months. And that would be to include the workup orders immediately preceding the deployment. Cap on frequency, something like twice in 5 years or twice in 10 years, what have you. And then there were two minimums that were suggested. One was a minimum time that the person should be working as a Town of Foxborough employee, and the second one is a minimum amount of time that the person should be in the military. Because there were speakers that got up at town meeting in the spring and said, what if somebody walks right in the door and then joins the military? Or what if somebody's working for the town and immediately joins the military and then deploys? We don't think that sort of thing is going to happen, but anyways. It was suggested, I think a couple of times, that it's unfair for something like this to be offered to employees of the town and not to every resident of the town. And the committee that did meet disagreed with that and offers moving forward that this is a plan for the employer, which is the town of Foxborough, and that other employers do have the option of taking up this sort of a thing, and many do. And then also a sunset clause in it that it be reviewed annually. And then you can see a list of other considerations down the bottom. I just run through them any questions so far, just on the resolutions to some of the concerns? Other considerations that were also discussed, but we didn't come to quite a spearhead on, were that the service members, they may need to turn in their LES statements, their leave and earning statements, to show how much they're earning. And the question was raised, what's the tax impact when somebody's, working in a combat zone and they're, tax-free? And the question was raised, how much of the pay is included? Is it all military pay? Is it just like the local option? That's something that needs more discussion. One thing that Senator Barrows and, Senator Timilty and Representative Barrows suggested was that now that we are part of a four-town district, that if this is something that we craft and we think it's a good plan, then it ought to be shared and possibly adopted by the other three towns after Foxborough, shows that this is successful. And then one of the questions that were raised or concerns was we need to look at are there any unintended consequences? And I think that resulted, that was actually one of our representatives' questions, and that question came from the fact that there seemed to be some unintended consequences from the local option that we put forth before. So, and then the next step would be to go to get the actual salary and wage figures and to get the actual military rank and salary of people that this would affect. And then, two last questions for council. One was to confirm with council that the town would not be liable if someone were to be injured on deployment, which seems like an obvious answer, yet they have two employers. They're actively being employed by the military, but they still are attached to the town. We thought we knew the answer, but that would probably be a question for the town council. And then the last thing, the committee, or the ad hoc committee, wanted insurance from town council that nothing from the bargaining units could change or supersede the contents of the petition once it's finished.
Can you say that again? I didn't quite get that last
Sure.
part.
That some insurance from town council that nothing from bargaining units moving forward into the future could change or supersede what would be adopted as this home rule petition.
Gotcha, okay.
In the meeting with Senator Timilty and Representative Barrows, they felt that if some of the other towns in the district were to come on board with this, that they felt that there was a very good likelihood that this could get through both the Senate and the House. They recommended us doing a rough draft proposal first. They would run it by both House and Senate council for some recommendations and some refinement before we wrote up anything to bring before town committee to ask for permission, before town meeting to ask for permission to go for a home rule petition.
So if it goes in that direction, rather than the home rule petition, that wouldn't be needed anymore because they take over that?
Well, it would be. It still would be needed, but they would run our draft by House and the
I
House
see
and
what you're saying,
Senate
okay.
councils, just to make sure that
Yeah.
we were covering what they might have objections to. They felt that the likelihood of passing was good, that the only thing that they felt would be an impediment would possibly be the Ways and Means Committee. Us taking something on and then later on, 3/4 of the way through a year, not having the funding to support it and then going before them for some supplemental funding. So that was the one thing that they thought might be an impediment.
Thank you. You finished?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions from the board, or did you
No,
want?
I mean.
You were
that's-
involved in that
it's-
committee, correct?
We're still meeting, but like I said, I don't think it's something we intend on pushing to the special town meeting. Would be possibly the fall. But it's a good group. They are.
Okay, you are looking for the annual town meeting for this.
Annual, not the special yet.
Right, so the recommendations that we would make coming out of this are that a committee be appointed, whether it's an already designated committee or a new committee, because what we've had is an ad hoc committee. We've taken no votes, made no decisions, other than a little bit of guidance, as I said. So maybe designate a committee to write a draft, seek some counsel, and then present the plan to the reviewing authorities here, and then to include it on the spring ATM if it's ready.
Okay. And I think the advisory committee, when they went through it the first time, was that split? Was that half-half?
It was 6-5
6-5,
opposed.
yeah. So there's new members and old members coming in, so. But the stuff that I heard at town, the caps and you're addressing those on the top 8 items. I didn't hear anything else that wasn't on this list, so I think you're off to a good start. All right, so I don't think we need to make a motion, but
Well,
I
do we want-
don't think you're hearing any objection.
Well, if their recommendation is to put a committee together, do we think we should make a motion for a committee to move forward and continue this work? Is that what you're looking for, Mike?
Yeah, I would like to see, it makes sense to me that we do have the Veteran Services Advisory Committee. That might be a good committee to take this on, or another committee that you designate. If it was the Veteran Services Committee, I work as liaison with that committee, so I could still liaise with them. But I'm happy to step out of this and then see how it progresses. But I don't think I don't think that this ad hoc committee is the right committee to carry this football forward.
So you don't need any appointment from this board for a committee, then? Just you can take
Unless-
this?
Unless someone wants to designate a committee, like the Veteran Services Committee should be the one to take this and move forward as we've recommended.
Okay, and you wouldn't-
If you recommend that we formally build a committee with the ad hoc members that we have, then we'll do that. We'll just need a formal appointments to do that.
How did you draft it last time? It was a warrant article by the selectmen, correct? I mean, it was our warrant article, but you brought it to the
Well, it was
selectmen.
the state's.
No, town council, the board voted to have town council write the warrant article and put it on the warrant.
Okay, so there's no committee that put that together, it was just...
No, that was just
a
written
simple
from the
accepted
state.
statute and
Yeah.
mass law.
Of the mass law itself, yes.
And this has got a lot more thought into it. It's, you know, it's raised some good questions here, so I really like to see this expedited, you know. I'd like to see it in the fall town meeting. I don't see why we should wait till spring. I don't think it'd take much more to tidy this up.
Education,
The-
Steve,
You know?
that's.
The big
that's
thing for the fall town meeting was, we thought it was valuable that the House and Senate side council does take a look at it, as well as our town council, and there isn't time to do that for the fall town meeting.
Okay.
So that's something that would need to wait till the spring. That would be the main, the long pole in the tent.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what Mike said, because this is a pretty extensive bit of research that needs to take place. And you're also going to need to work with the Attorney General, because prior town council offered an opinion that the AG is going to have to be dialogued with, because when they do an acceptance statute, they don't like towns that come along with their own law about something they've already written. So they're going to be resistive to this idea. And so we have to have very good dialogue with them right away, or what'll happen is a huge amount of work will take place, and if town meeting were to pass it, then it could very well be rejected by the AG, and that'd be a tragedy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what our legislators said, just like that, is that, rather than doing all this work, presenting it, and then it comes and gets thrown back at us, it makes sense to send it through the House and the Senate and talk with the AG, and then get our own opinions from our town council, and before we get the cart ahead of the horse.
If Mike is comfortable that the Veterans Advisory Committee would take this on as a challenge, I would suggest to the board that I think they're just looking for the board's blessing to say, we'd like to have you do it, because frankly, there's an awful lot of work that's got to take place here if it's got any chance of getting on a spring warrant. And remember, when we say spring warrant, we're really talking about the warrant article all done by roughly the 1st of February. So we're only talking 4 months here as it is.
Okay.
We're not talking May, we're talking really 4 months. So it will be hard to get this done.
So Mike and Bob, you've already rolled up your sleeves, you know what needs to get done. So rather than put you on the spot, why don't you, if you want to use the VS group that's already together, or take the time and put together a group that may have some of them and other people, if you need outside expertise, and then you can come back to us with the group and we can bless that group.
Great,
I
sounds
don't-
good.
I don't think we have to make a decision tonight on who's going to be on it.
Right.
Very good. Great, thank you for all your work,
All right,
appreciate it.
thank you.
What they cover.
Not too bad. All right, now we're ready for the Neponset Reservoir Reclamation Committee.
Say up here, that's us. No, there's no name.
Bob's site.
Site.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got really deep.
Because I did go to this meeting and I
came up,
grabbed,
yep.
someone had asked me for handouts. Looks like close to the same board anyways. You all by yourself? Oh, in the back there. All right.
Backup, yeah.
Get into this. Yeah, that's what I wanted to All right, you want to just introduce yourselves and?
Sure. I'm Reese Bowen. I'm president of NRRC. Formally, for the record, NRRC doesn't actually stand for anything, but we answer to whatever you want to call us, so Reclamation Committee is fine.
I got that from your website, or somebody's website. I had a hard time figuring out what it meant.
And we have several other board members here, Rick Lewis, Kim Mellon, Mary Peterson, Sheila Warner. Like to quickly review for you what's going on out at the reservoir these days with regard to cleaning up the industrial pollution which occurred in the reservoir. Historically, the Foxborough company, now owned by Inventus, of course, discharged two main classes of pollutants into the reservoir. Phosphates, which act as a nutrient to cause excess weed growth, and several heavy metals, cadmium in particular. Those discharges were done under permit from both state and federal environmental authorities. And I'm going to be talking this evening just about the heavy metals. So under the state Superfund law, which is also referred to as the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, or MCP, sometimes Section 21E, the party that discharged contaminants into the reservoir, the Foxborough Company, was required to prepare what's known as a Phase 3 remedial action plan, in which they were to assess the potential of any and all alternatives that could be used to clean up the pollutants in the reservoir, the heavy metals. The Foxborough Company and their consultants prepared that Phase 3 report, and in it they concluded that there is no technically feasible and cost-effective remediation alternative that could clean up the cadmium. And the state Department of Environmental Protection, which oversees the MCP process, signed off on that Phase 3 report. And then at that point, and I know this is a lot of detail here, but at that point, the Foxborough Company was required to prepare what's known as a response action outcome. And they did that earlier this year, and that was released in July, response action outcome, and that is now available for public comment through October 15th. And this is the response action outcome report. I know the Board of Selectmen received a copy. You're on the mailing list, so there's one kicking around someplace. There's also a copy available for review in Boyden Library. We have a copy, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, Board of Water and Sewer, so there are copies of this available. We also can make it available in electronic format if anybody prefers that. NRRC objects strongly to this response action outcome, and we have three general objections. First, this report asserts that everything's fine out at the reservoir, and we disagree quite strenuously with that. Among other things, to qualify for what's called a Class C RAO, it has to be the case that the pollution situation is not getting any worse. And we believe that that has not been clearly proven. There is currently no good information on what is coming down Gudgeon Brook into the reservoir. It's a complicated situation why that's the case, that there's no good information on that, but there's not. So heavy metals could conceivably be continuing to be discharged into the reservoir. Also, sort of technically, there's a requirement that the cadmium that's in the water of the reservoir not be increasing or getting any worse over time. We believe that the amount of cadmium that's in the bottom sediments of the reservoir is continuing to cause elevation of the cadmium level in the water. So for technical reasons, we think there's a flaw in this. I think much more importantly, our second general objection to this response action outcome is that it proposes that the reservoir is going to improve by itself, simply through the passage of time. And NRRC has recently had some field work conducted at the reservoir, some empirical studies which prove conclusively that the situation out there is not getting better by itself over time. This spring, we had a consultant go out and take a bunch of samples from the bottom sediments in the reservoir and measure the amount of cadmium that was there. And this figure shows a whole pile of results. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'll just sort of hit a couple of the high points. But these colored zones represent areas of decreasing concentration of cadmium in the bottom sediments as you get further away from the mouth of Gudgeon Brook, which was historically the source of the discharge. And if you compare these data from the spring of 2012 with the data that the Foxborough company collected back in 1998 as part of the MCP process, you find that the concentration of cadmium in the sediments has not decreased at all over 14 years, between 1998 and 2012. So the reservoir is not getting better by itself, and we believe that if it hasn't improved at all in the last 14 years, it's not going to improve on its own over any kind of reasonable time scale. We also have these breakout bar charts here. Each of these has two bars. On the right is the spring 2012 sampling and the amount of cadmium in the sediments there. And then on the left is a bar showing the cadmium concentration in the sediments from the closest sampling station from 1998. And you can see that in almost all these cases, the amount of cadmium in the bottom sediments in 2012 is actually higher slightly than it was in 1998. Why that's the case, we're not sure. We have neither the technical resources nor the money to investigate that thoroughly. We believe that Invencis should be required to answer the question of why there's more cadmium in the bottom sediments in 2012 than in nearby sampling stations there was in 1998.
NRRC took the second sample, and who took the first one? Was that?
That was done by the consultants for the Foxborough company as part of the requirements of the MCP process. Again, just to summarize, what this shows is that the proposed natural attenuation and recovery that Invencis says is going to happen, we believe is not occurring, and it's not going to occur, or at least not on any kind of reasonable time scale. So we object to that portion of the response action outcome. And then our third general objection is that one requirement for an RAO is that it propose the term of art is definitive and enterprising steps for remediating the situation. And we believe that this report does not propose definitive and enterprising steps. Invencis and their consultants over the next 5 years are proposing to do a little bit of water sampling, a little bit of bottom sediment sampling, and to determine how deep the mud at the bottom of the reservoir is. And their reasons for wanting to know that are laid out in here. We don't believe that that is definitive and enterprising. We think that quite a bit more monitoring of the cadmium in the water and the sediments is warranted. And we also believe, much more importantly, that Invencis should be required over the next 5 years, if they're not going to clean it up, to at least investigate and ideally pilot test some of the techniques that could be used in the future to clean it up. 5 years from now, they will be required to do another major review And we think that, we would hope that by 5 years from now, if not before, considerably more information would be available. Let me give you just one quick example so you'll know what kinds of things we're talking about. Invencis and their consultants concluded in the Phase 3 report that you can't dredge out in the reservoir because there are too many stumps out there. And they said that with no documentation or, in our opinion, justification. We, again, have been working with our consultants to actually map the stumps out in the reservoir, and we don't believe that they are so dense as to constitute a significant impediment to dredging. So we think that this draft is less than definitive and enterprising. I mentioned that this is open for public comment through October 15th. We encourage anybody in the town to review it and put in some public comments. We're hoping that the Board of Selectmen will want to make some official public comments, and NRRC would be happy to provide any information. We can give you copies of that empirical work that we've been doing, provide you with some written materials to assist you in drafting a letter. In the past, I've worked with Mr. DeVellis, and happy to do that again, or work with you with town manager, however you want to handle this.
Yeah, I think at the last comment period, we drafted up a letter, the board signed it.
That supported their comments.
Supported their comments. And then we did have a follow-up meeting with the DEP, Jay Barrows, other representatives from the town were there, Board of Health, Conservation Commission. Not to say it fell on deaf ears, but it went through that process, and they published this new report with another 5-year waiting period. So I think it's valuable to take a second look and get comments in by the 15th. Wish we could do more. I mean, I thought it was a pretty strong letter that we had done with the follow-up, and after the first meeting, I thought we had something, and then I was surprised at the second meeting. And you guys, Sheila, you've been doing this for what, 20 years?
26 years.
26 years, yeah, so it's...
We had a lot of really strong cases all along the way.
Yeah.
All on deaf ears, unfortunately.
Yeah. Discussion from the board?
So-
Very well spoken, you did a great job in presenting that.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Jim had informed me he had made your meeting. I can't make all of them, so. But I'm glad you came forward and did that, so I could really get the gist of what you were having to explain to the board, and appreciate the work and time.
Anything
Thank
else? All right, so if you want, I can work with them, we'll work together, and then I'll send you guys a draft, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting. Great. Thank you. Thanks for...
Can I just make one
Sure,
quick comment
absolutely.
also? Reese.
If you just introduce yourself, though.
Oh, Kim Mellon, NRRC. Reese did a great job on the industrial pollution side of things, and he referenced that there's another whole side of this, which is the phosphorus side, and I just wanted to let you know that there are some things going right on the phosphorus side of things. And I wanted to say thank you very much to the Conservation Commission, who has always been wonderful to work with. They have been facilitating with us a couple of things that we do on an annual basis with respect to the phosphorus. The first is an annual drawdown. We have phosphorus that stays in the water column while the water is still at a certain temperature. And prior to the water temperature dropping, we do an annual, would like to do an annual drawdown, and the Conservation Commission, working with the DPW, has been great this year. We started the drawdown last year, so that's one of our best tools dealing with the phosphorus. The other thing is that DPW, again, through Conservation Commission, has just gone out and weed whacked our
I saw that,
dam,
yeah.
which is great. When you have an earthen dam, one of the primary ways to care for it is weed whacking and mowing, and that retains the structural integrity of an earthen dam. So thank you, Conservation Commission and DPW.
The, one question, Kim Maurice, I was there just last week. Why is the water so green right now, especially at the dam? You could not see through the water at all, and made for a very bad fishing day, but
Yeah, it's not just at the dam.
is that an algae, or?
Yes.
Very strong algae.
Yeah.
I mean, it was-
The short answer to that, and I'm mindful of your time this evening, you have many important things to get to, so I'll give you the short answer. Green is chlorophyll, that is an algae bloom, and that is largely attributable to, that's the legacy of the over-enrichment of the reservoir with the nutrient phosphorus. We've been working for several years now to try and control the nuisance effects of excess nutrients in the reservoir. You can suppress algae blooms and you can kill weed overgrowth in the reservoir, but it requires chemical means, and we're reluctant to use those if we don't have to. So it's a balancing act. But the water quality right now, and frankly, for the foreseeable future, will continue to be affected by the excess nutrients. We hope that with our annual drawdowns and with our best estimates of what appropriate management steps are in the way of herbicide use or suppression of the algae blooms, we can keep the reservoir pleasant for fishing, boating. We hope someday swimming, especially if we can all be assured that the cadmium toxicity would not be bad for swimmers.
There was 27 tons of phosphates in the sediments, and we can't get rid of them. We
Yeah.
can just try to deal with them.
Yeah. And, I mean, you guys are, I guess I want to stress, you're volunteers. You've been doing it for quite a while. You're also professionals. Some of you are in the business, but you've also hired LSPs, licensed site professionals, to do your testing. So it's not you going out in your backyard and picking up a sample. So it's one LSP versus another LSP, and hopefully, through the public comment process, through a second look, maybe we can make some progress. So, thank you.
Thank you.
You guys want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little hot up here. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Can we
You
open
don't mind?
the door?
We, open at some.
Come back at, say we'll come back at quarter of 9.
$10,000 grant.
He said back on.
Okay, thank you. We're going to jump into one of the action items. Sharon Wasson, the town planner, is here to talk about the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative Program grant opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillis. The application is due the 28th of September. It's not quite finished, but because you're not meeting between now and then, I needed to catch you this evening. Jim spoke about the master plan, and one of the primary recommendations is we needed to do some wayfinding in the downtown. And when I saw this grant, which one of the eligible categories was wayfinding in downtown, I said, we have to go for that. We're proposing to create a logo and branding for downtown, put up banners and signs, which would, Gabby and I picked one that we liked, would look something like this. It says downtown Foxborough instead of Plymouth, and create a digital guide to downtown using Foursquare as the basis. And this is an existing program that we can further customize so people could find the hours of things, the daily specials and other stuff.
You should not have given this to me, Sharon. I'm telling you right away. You need to reset that and give it to Ginny, because my paws are, I have like an 8-year-old phone. There you go. Ginny, just take it because.
My phone's older than yours. So it's done except for the budget, the anticipated outcomes, and the town's ability to proceed. I also wanted to include a section where we would evaluate or measure whether or not we felt we'd been successful in doing this work. Because I don't like to do things just for the sake of doing things. I want to make sure that we've affected a change. So with your consent, I'd like to request that the chairman sign the grant application on behalf of the town.
Any discussion from the board?
Just a question for the J.C.'s. I know that they put up banners at Christmas time. Is that still be viable for them to do
Sure,
that? Because
sure.
I know each year they would like to add
And there's
more.
Founder's Day banners as
Right,
well.
right.
So we just wanted to have a little bit more often up there. Part of if you don't know Foxborough and you're trying to drive around the common, and you're paying attention to the traffic, you miss all, for lack of better words, good stuff you're going by. So we wanted signs that say you've arrived at a place that has all these wonderful things that you can eat and do and experience and be. Please stop and visit us.
Good.
Nice.
Okay, great.
And you got to do that in 25 words or less?
Yeah,
That's what the application is?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not being facetious.
No,
what
that's
it
right there,
says,
25
yes.
words or less.
And that's your statement right there.
Oh, actually, you've written it already, okay.
Yeah.
Sharon's not like me, Mr. Chairman. She can speak very, very succinctly.
So is this ready to sign right now?
The front sheet is,
Okay.
so you have the grant as it's
And then you'll
complete to
attach the
now.
graphics
Yes.
after that? Okay.
Can we limit everybody else here to 25 words or less tonight?
Do we need a motion for this, Kevin?
Yes.
Just so that it's a record?
Yes.
I move that we approve the application for the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative Program FY13, the technical assistance grant, and Chairman DeVellis to sign it.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Mark. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Nice
Give you that
job,
back.
Sharon.
Thank
And
you,
if you could just give me a copy when it's done.
I
Good.
Thank you,
definitely-
Great,
Sharon.
thanks for the hard work, Sharon, appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate the time. And thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thanks for being patient. You want to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, grab another chair?
Thank you.
We've also asked Council Dick Gellerman to sit at the table for this discussion.
Sorry.
Great. Thank you all for coming. If you could just quickly, for the record, get it over with and present your names, and then we can talk.
Fire, Craft Group.
Dan Murphy, Craft Group.
Dan Krantz, Craft Group.
Jim Coterie, Craft Group.
All right, thanks. And before we start, I just wanted to say a couple words, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I just wanted to set at least a little bit of a tone. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for coming. We asked you to come, and as a courtesy, you came to discuss with us, so thank you for doing that. It was my hope, this process has been going on for a month or so, couple months, beginning of August, where there's some potential for some development up on Route 2, some Phase 2, if you would.
Route 1.
What did I say?
Route 2,
Route
that's
2.
way.
Phase 2, Route 1. So Linda did a nice job coming back to us and explaining what the big picture stuff was, and now I think you're starting to go around to a couple of the boards. It was my intent to have a nice, open discussion tonight. I saw the reporter last week, and, you know, for a past town council that no longer works for us to go in, you know, under, I don't know how it got there, but to set the tone for this meeting, where you're coming in, you know, since Thursday. I'm sure your phone's been ringing and you've seen it. My phone's been ringing, and it's starting to go back and forth. I apologize for that. It wasn't, as chairman, it wasn't my directive to go to the newspaper. There's going to be plenty of time once the discussion goes. The reporter's always at this meeting. But for any board member to go to the reporter for his or her specific case to be made before it comes to the meeting, I apologize for that. I didn't want to set the tone this way, and we're already starting off on the bad foot. In response, I know you guys had an open letter to the people telling them to contact your representatives because what you're doing is good, and I get it, and it's a private company, you can do that. But if we're going to start going back and forth with the press to try to influence what's happening at this table, we can certainly do it, but it's not going to end well. I have confidence that, you know, I'm not disagreeing with Attorney Durensis, agreeing with him or disagreeing, but the fact that it's out there now and we're trying to play catch-up at this table, we're all qualified to ask those questions, to have our opinion at this table and have that discussion. But I'm hoping moving on, the Board of Selectmen doesn't find it necessary to go every week and state their case separate from the table. And I'm hoping you guys don't start doing the same thing. There's a lot of potential for some good stuff to happen on Phase 2. I think it's our duty to vet all that out, and if it's good for the town, certainly if it's good for you, we'll help you as quickly as we can and make it as easy. Unfortunately, what you guys are looking to do, some of the purview is on the Board of Selectmen, some is on the Planning Board, some is on the Water and Sewer, and, you know, whether I like it or not, it goes back to 2007, and everybody has an opinion, so it's not going to be an easy road. But as I guess my request as chairman of this process, please keep it civil. Please don't go out of bounds and try to make your case independently of the table. You have plenty of time to make it here. We don't need the mess that was, you know, had the potential of happening over the last week. I didn't speak with Attorney Durensis. His firm still works for the town. He can give a private opinion, but to bring that to the newspaper is beyond me.
Jim,
So
I just want to explain, Attorney Durensis did not bring that to the paper. I brought that to the paper.
my point is, if you're a selectman, I thought we had an agreement that we weren't going to do that. So in my book, that might be, you know, that's a different story. But what I'm asking is, if you did it, it's done. Please don't do it again. You know, it's a free. You're all elected. You do what you want to do. But if I'm chairman and it makes it difficult to get progress for the town or progress for one of our businesses, it's going to become an issue. And that's all I'm asking, is show us a little more restraint so we can have some productive meetings.
I understand, and I agree. I think it really applies to both sides of the equation here for this particular situation, though. So I do understand what you're saying.
All right, with that podium done, we invited you to, I think we had a couple questions. If you can explain what you're looking to do up on Route 1 to expand and start the dialogue. And I know you've done it already, but I think it's helpful for us to hear it firsthand. Thank you.
Well, great, and I appreciate your comments too, Jim. I think Ted's going to kind of walk you through some ideas that we have to date, not unlike what he did with the ad hoc committee that Linda was running and that we presented to some other boards and committees. We've actually been working on this couple years now, working on a term sheet. I think it's to a good place right now where, as you say, you know, we want to go forward. We want to, you know, start the process. And so I'll turn it over to Ted, but the hope would be that we will formally, you know, get into a negotiation committee being formed and we can start the process as soon as possible.
Thank you.
There's not a lot new that I, that I can expand upon from what we discussed at the ad hoc committee. I did bring a couple of graphics with me if you think that would be helpful, just to give a little more flavor.
But a lot of people don't know what was said at the ad hoc committee, so if you could start from the beginning and express what you want to do as a whole.
Sure.
Because when you say that, I never attended those meetings, and so did a lot of other people, and the community has no idea what you're talking about, a lot of people, so.
I think from a big picture perspective, we've learned what has worked well at Patriot Place in the past 5 years. You know, we opened the big box retail in the fall of 2007, Patriot Place North Marketplace in the summer and the fall of 2008. The world has changed dramatically since 2008, as we all know. Fortunately, we were able to bring the project to a near conclusion of the initial lease up, but some of the things we've learned along the way is that the restaurant and entertainment uses have thrived at Patriot Place. We are on the map nationally as a destination for those kinds of uses. We are being sought out by restaurant and entertainment tenants to locate at Patriot Place, so we want to build on that strength. And that's some of the things that I've presented, and I'll touch on in a little more detail in a minute. Our hotel, the Renaissance Hotel and Spa, has done very well at Patriot Place, and we've had an expression of interest to add a second hotel on the property. The medical center does very well. This is the Brigham and Women's Mass General Healthcare Center. They're doing very well. They're looking to expand within the building. The retail was a bit of a slow start because of the economy in 2008. We are building on that. Things like Trader Joe's that the community spoke up and said, we want this at Patriot Place. With your help, we were able to get that in place. It's opened very successfully, and we hope to kind of parlay that into more successful retail openings. So we're just trying to build on our strengths. We also know that with the town's master plan effort and the housing production plan effort, there are some opportunities to tie in with that with some selective zoning modifications. Things like multifamily housing done the right way that's consistent with your goals for housing production. Maybe something that's transit-oriented with a commuter rail stop that we always thought should be fully activated. It's there already. It can tie in, hopefully, with some future and encourage some future development across the street. Things that we talked about in our MEPA filing for that. There are some uses up and down Route 1 that we've been contacted over the years for a car wash, a gas station, things like that we've put on kind of the table that we'd like to talk about in more detail and see if there's an intelligent way to modify the zoning to foster that kind of development. We're prepared to move ahead if the town is. So with that, I'll show you a few examples of some of the restaurants that we have had discussions with.
Can cable access get that?
Yeah.
And some of these discussions are farther along than others. Sure. This is a representative photo of a Japanese hibachi steakhouse. Again, there's a tenant who I don't want to name today just because we like to work with our tenants on public announcements, but this would be the feel of the Japanese hibachi steakhouse that would like to be at Patriot Place. This is a rendering of a high-end Mexican restaurant who would, again, like to locate to Patriot Place. And just by way of background, and I said this at the other committee, we're not looking to just dump any and all restaurants into one location. We want to be very selective and sensitive to our existing tenants. We think that they all do a great job. We're not looking to oversaturate, cannibalize their business. We want to do things that are additive to the entire equation. And so we're trying to add restaurant options that are varied and add to the overall level, all of a high quality. We've been talking for some time about a bowling and entertainment complex. This is a representative photo of what the inside could look like. There's an operator who has expressed serious interest, and again, if we can make it feasible for them, I think we could land a deal and get them at Patriot Place. So those are those are photos of the kinds of things we have happening. We, as I mentioned, we do have a hotel operator that is interested in adding a second hotel. Without going into any more detail, that's the overview of what we're looking at.
Anyone else want to? No. I guess we'll open it up to the board for comments, questions.
Yeah. So basically, with that kind of entertainment, you need more liquor licenses. Simple, right to the point, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Do you have an idea how many you're looking for?
Yeah, we had, in a term sheet, had 6 all-alcohol licenses and 2 of the package store type licenses.
Now, the legislation that we were successful in obtaining back in 06 to 07 for 12 additional licenses was for serving. The 2 that you're asking for, other than that, would be package store type, selling of wine, booze, whatever. That is based on population. How would the town be successful in getting those from the legislation? I'd never heard of anybody doing that.
My understanding is, and maybe the attorneys can correct this, that they're all based on population, that you'd set up a home rule petition to the state legislature to increase the count for the town of Foxborough. And if there's a way to do that intelligently in collaboration with you, that's what we're asking to have done for both types of licenses.
Okay, and the zoning change, Dick, I'm
Mark,
sorry.
that piece would be part of special act, special
Will be
legislation.
2 separate legislations, or?
It could be, but you could, most likely you would do it all together.
And the zoning change you would be looking for housing, describe what type of housing you have in mind.
Yeah, we've been talking about multifamily housing. You know, the scale, I was asked about the scale the last time we were together. Based on one of the parcels that we had evaluated, it could support 200 to 300 units of housing done to a high-quality level, tastefully, fitting the scale of that particular parcel, but we don't have a specific plan ready to go. I think the goal would be to work with the town, the planning board, to make it the right fit for everybody. And, you know, we're not really ready to lay out a more specific plan until we have a more engaged discussion with you all.
What would the housing be for, employees, or?
Well, one of the things we've learned with Patriot Place, and I'm sorry to repeat this for those who have heard it, when we first planned it, we did consider some residential built into the project. Some of the projects we visited around the country had second and third floor residential above ground floor retail. And it was a bit cumbersome to execute that in the time frame that we were looking to launch Patriot Place. And so we just tabled it. But, you know, to make Patriot Place a true mixed-use project, we have the office, we have the hospitality, we have the shopping and the restaurants, but we don't really have the residential. So if there's a smart way to add that, it just adds to the cycling of the entire area there.
And the hotel, 1 or 2, or?
We have serious interest from one right now, one additional. We're not pushing for a third at this point, but I wouldn't want to rule it out. It's just that the first one has been successful. An operator has come forward who is really, we believe, ready to move forward if we can work with them.
Okay, thank you.
Ginny?
Yeah, if your plan is restaurant-oriented, why are you interested in 2 liquor store licenses?
You know, over the years, we have had expressions of interest from what I'll call big box retailers that do sell alcohol. It would be inappropriate for me to name names sitting here today, but I think that if those licenses were available, it would help attract some of those big box type users. Obviously, if it got to the point of having a real user and they applied for a license, we'd come before this board, they would come before this board and request it, but to be able to have those licenses available where they presently are not will help us collectively attract potential large-scale users to Route 1.
But that doesn't mean that it will ruin your restaurant business if those licenses are not available.
It's a different use. It's a different use completely.
And where, if you did have the large liquor stores, where would they be on your property?
Again, I hate to even call it a liquor store as much as big box retailers that sell alcohol.
That's a liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Very
they do
large.
more than just alcohol.
But where would it be on the property?
We don't have a specific plan. I will say in our MIPA filing in 2009, we had a placeholder for some big box across the street.
Because one of the concerns of the people at town Foxborough are, they're very hesitant about putting alcohol, readily available alcohol up on the Route 1 area. And you're asking for two. I mean, is your idea one on each side?
We don't have a specific location. I'm speaking more to the business use that we want to encourage. And again, the actual user would have to come before the board. There are other package store licenses up and down Route 1. You know, with Trader Joe's, I think that was vetted pretty thoroughly by this board. I think that would happen again in the future, but we're not going to get any interest from any users if there are no licenses available, and that's our.
But also, when you got the Trader Joe's license, there was a, I won't say a deal, but there was an accommodation made so that you wouldn't sell alcohol on certain days. So.
And I would imagine those questions would come up in the future for a user on Route 1. So we're not asking you to approve carte blanche a use today that we can go out and make a deal and, you know, without your knowledge, sign a lease and bring someone in and just say they can open. They have to come before the board to be granted a license.
I mean, I'm familiar with the special legislation for liquor licenses. They did it in Hingham. They did it up in Legacy Place.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it for restaurants. You know? So when you're asking the town of Foxborough to go to the legislature for special legislation, I'm a little hesitant. I can understand restaurants. I understand that perfectly. That's where you're going. But I really could not. I don't see why you would need to have a liquor for liquor stores. I don't see that, because I don't see that really as part of, if your plan is restaurants, then you're either one or the other. You know, especially
maybe I can go do some more homework.
when we're going to be dealing with special legislation.
Mhm. I think before we get to that point, if we're successful in furthering the discussion, I could hopefully get some more specific examples of the kinds of users that we would like to encourage to come to Route 1. It's not just a liquor store. So let me do some work on that. Again, I'm not at liberty to name names here, but I think if I could show you other examples, I think it would help you decide whether it's worthwhile to try to encourage that for the town.
Anyone else?
Is the proposed second hotel going to be on the Patriot Place side?
As contemplated today, yes. They, believe it or not, folks were on site today looking at options for locating, and they looked at options on the Patriot Place side.
And, okay, thank you. And Dan, when we had met, you had mentioned a dueling piano venue when we were talking about some of those different venues. Is that off the table, or is that still under consideration?
I don't know. I don't know, is that still a possibility?
There is an entertainment concept. I wouldn't characterize it strictly as dueling piano, but it's entertainment-based that has expressed an interest as well.
I just have,
Sure.
Oh, you were talking about a car wash, and another restaurant, and another hotel. Do we have a problem with water up in that area? I mean, as far as the availability of water? Because when you use a car wash, you have to have a pretty good amount of available water.
Yeah, we have not studied it to the point of being able to tell you, no, there's no problem with availability, but as with any of our projects, our consultants would come in, evaluate the usage that we currently operate with, and make sure there is available capacity before we would be able to put forth an approval plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I believe there's sufficient capacity based on the studies we've done, especially for the project across the street. You know, the MIPA certificate for the office campus showed there was sufficient capacity for 1.5 million square feet of office plus some big box. So I'm inclined to think there's plenty of capacity, but we would need to study that more thoroughly to be sure.
So one of my friends called out of the blue and said that she would love to have a vegan restaurant up there. I don't know how to spell it, but anyway, so I'll just throw that one out there. And I know that you had kind of touched on the wind turbine type of thing. Do you want to explain any of that this evening, or?
I mean, I would just generally say we're always looking for renewable energy opportunities. You see what we've been doing with the solar projects at Patriot Place. So there are other renewable opportunities, whether it's cogen or some other things that have come up that we'd like to put on the table as part of advancing a discussion.
Jim, before I go.
Yeah, I'll wrap up if you want.
So basically, you're in front of the board, what is your intent? What do you want us to do right now?
Well, our hope is we can advance the discussions, and if you were to form a negotiating committee and we could have discussions, we've been working on this, as I mentioned, for a few years now, so we have a pretty good term sheet that outlines most of the things we talked about. We respect the process and want to follow the process through the planning board meetings, et cetera. But I think it would be in both of our interests to get a committee together and start negotiating this. We have some December deadlines that are looming, and we have some some tenants that have expressed interest. So I think our interests are aligned here. And if, all we're asking to do is get together with the committee meeting. We're not asking you to approve a liquor license or make a zoning change. We're just asking you to, get a committee that we can all meet and discuss this.
Well, regardless of how it goes, a negotiating committee that would report back to the board, I would imagine, executive session. And then eventually it all goes down to town meeting. So it's all going to be go to the people at the end. I've had a lot of calls from constituents on both sides of this issue in the last 3-4 weeks. And one stood out to me that was, I think a few of us might have got the same email. It'd be derelict to our duties as selectmen that represent the voters of the town to not at least talk about this and then report back to the board and see where the board wants to go with it. I kind of gave that a lot of thought in the last week or so. I know there's some differences from the past that I think can all be brought together with this, the old deal and the new deal, that could make this work. The person also stated that, the increasing of revenue for the town is the biggest reason that I let it out, she said that we should talk to the number one business in the town, and that it was very important for us to do that. So she spoke very well, and I think that I would ask the board to consider it, that we do. We're not putting nothing, we're not saying we're going to agree to this, we're not saying nothing, but we need to move forward with this. I think it's to the best interest of the community and the taxpayer to get more revenue. Obviously, if you get a hotel, you're going to have a great deal of real estate taxation, you're going to have a great deal of meals tax, whatever other new tax we can think of in the next couple of months. And some other things. But I also will tell you another concerned citizen's message to me was that if this was to become a casino-related situation where the town was gearing up to support another community within a certain area, that it would be very upsetting to the whole community once again. So I think these are all things we need to talk about if the board does approve to have this committee, negotiating committee, because that seems to be the sentiment out there. We all know Plainville's gearing up. Everybody's listening. So there's a line here that people are saying, well, yes, it's great, but no, we already went down this road. So I'm hoping that the intent of this is to further Patriot's Place and not to try and piggyback something down the road that could be detrimental to this community without being represented properly. So That's about all I have to say.
I'm going to ask the difficult question about the billboards. How will that issue be settled? The outstanding issue of the billboard situation. Would that be settled during these discussions, or is that something that will be settled prior to these discussions? Any thoughts on
During the
that?
discussions.
During the discussions.
I would assume what the water and sewer commission is that part of, I mean, are we going back to the, where it was broken down before in 2007 was the water and waste, about the billboard situation?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
maybe I can address that. Last week, maybe, the Water and Sewer Commission has met in public session and, among other things, discussed the billboards and also discussed the reuse tank and discussed publicly the concept, the thought that they would be interested in discussing a potential sale of the billboards as well as a sale of the reuse tank to the Kraft organization. Not to say that we wouldn't also talk about the terms regarding the billboard if it's not sold, but I would anticipate that should your board decide to go forward and authorize the commencement of negotiations, that we would discuss among all the other issues, billboards, reuse tank. The water board has issues that it needs to have discussed, and the billboards would be among them. I think all of that should be discussed at the same time.
Would council be, either if it's Mr. Gellerman, town council, or if we would seek the use of special counsel like we did with Patriots Place? I believe the gentleman's name was Davis, was his last name. Excuse me?
I think it was Mark Davis.
Mark or
Mike
Mike?
Davis.
Mike.
Sorry.
No, it was a special firm. No offense, Dick. Is that something that the town couldn't incur those costs? Is that something that's part of the situation, maybe negotiating? If we, let's say this board decided to go into a negotiating committee, is the representation of the town going to be paid for by the KO group?
Yes.
You know, look back at 2007 when the original Patriots Place town vote went, and the elephant in the room is the $7.5 million. And what I'm concerned about is we go in a circle here, we negotiate in good faith. The selectmen, at the end of the day, don't have the vote on the liquor licenses. The town meeting does. So we can spin a committee and a process, and they both, beneficial to both, get to town meeting, and the question that's going to be raised is, where's the $7.5 million, or the $10 million, or the $5 million? Now, when the town voted the project down, the treatment plant, there was money left on the table. Is it owed to the town? Is it owed with a social contract? Was the piece of the contract that was not a provision not to protect the town? Is the money that's coming into the billboards supposed to be going to the treatment plant, but the treatment plant's not done, so who owns it? Where are the billboards? Whose land is it on? If we don't answer that question, I have a feeling it's gonna come up at the 11th hour to bite us. When this got voted down in 2007, it just amazes me that 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and we're still arguing about it in 2012. Every year, every executive session, every time the billboard comes up, it went into, executive session that we were gonna do an eminent domain. People are surprised that it's on private property, not on public. It's such a mess, and everybody's hands are in it. What would it take to figure out the answer? Who is the money owed or isn't it? And then put it to paper from an attorney that the town pays for, and then we live with it. We know the town knows what we're getting, what we have going into negotiations, rather than negotiating not knowing what we have, and the vice versa. You guys are in the same position. Has that question and you don't have the longevity because you weren't here. You were here at the beginning, but then you left. Some board members were here and not here. Has that question ever been asked to our attorney with the charge, take a couple weeks, put it on your letterhead and answer the question? I think we'd all be better off getting into negotiations with that behind us.
So are you saying that, has it been established that the signs are not owned by the town? Is that what you're saying, partially? Is that
I'm
what the
afraid it
craft
depends on
organization is
who
saying?
you're asking and in what forum that you're asking it, because I've heard 5 different answers.
If I could interject here, I think if Attorney DeRensis were here, we would have a difference of opinion. He would have one opinion about some of these issues, and I would have a different opinion. And we could certainly go through the trouble of what you're suggesting. What I was hoping we would do, though, is just put that issue to the negotiation committee, and hopefully we can resolve it as friends. You know, we understand your position, we respect your position. Hopefully you understand and respect ours. I think if you nominate a negotiating committee, we may be able to work through the issue and not have to resort to getting letters from lawyers. And it's worth a try. And if that negotiating committee ultimately does not get that issue resolved, you can always go back to the lawyers.
And I understand it, and I respect that. If we had a position that we were putting forward, to hear Attorney DeRensis say something after he no longer here in the paper is not an attorney, it hasn't been asked and answered on letterhead. It says it after. My question is, has the town looked at this, spent the effort, and came up with a definitive answer? Granted, it might not be the same answer you come up with, but how do we go into negotiations or move forward without this issue coming up at the end if it's not addressed at the
Can I
beginning?
just say something first, before Kevin? Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but it's my understanding that the craft organization has been presented with the documentation necessary to adhere to the section of the MOU that requires the release of all interest and rights to the signs and revenue since May 14th, 2012. And that information, that has not been returned back to the Water and Sewer Commissioner signed. So it would be my understanding that that research had been done by prior town council to come up with the determination, and that was the appropriate step for the Water and Sewer Commissioners to be taking. So I just wanted to get that out there.
I think
I don't know what
Dick
you're gonna
wanted to
say.
answer your question. Dick, did you want to answer something, Jim? I saw you trying to motion.
Actually, I have looked at it. It's my opinion that the town does own the billboards, and I would enter into negotiations with that position. Council will disagree, but respectfully, I think that's one of the things we need to talk about. I would go into those negotiations with my own opinion that we do own the billboards.
Okay.
And how that, I mean, all people are really asking to do is to start a process tonight. It's a negotiating process, and no one here today, sitting here tonight, can tell you how this is going to turn out. You know, it could last as long as an hour. It could. And that'll be that. Or it could actually turn out to be something that meets our needs and theirs, but you don't know until you start. This is, you've all said it, this is far from the end of a process. It's very much the beginning of a process. And then that process takes it here, some of which could be done in executive session, a lot of which would not be, and then to a town meeting. But, you know, sitting here tonight, where this comes out, I don't know. I can tell you how I would start that issue, which is that I think we own the billboards.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, but, I mean, really, how much debate are we going to have whether or not we have a debate? I think I've been down this road before. I really am intrigued to see what's going to happen here. And as the fathers of the town, I think it's our duty to represent the townspeople in the best interest we can. I think I'd like to see this happen. I think I would like to have myself as a member of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Pagos, Town Council, and probably Special Town Council, and if anybody else can think of someone else that would want to be on this committee, move forward and get this ball rolling. I would also like to add that I'm not going to go through what I did with Patriots Place, or would I want anybody else board committee where it's every other night situation, it's this, it's that, it's away from the family, we all got convictions here. I think if you're gonna have meetings, they need to be here at the town hall. I think they need to be between 5 and 7 on the night of a Tuesday, because we're all geared to come here. It's a night where whoever's on this committee is already, from the board, is already, you know, the night's planned. So it's not an inconvenience to our families or other convictions that we have. I think that's very important. It's not going to be a Friday night thing, obviously. And not, no offense, Linda, please. But I really think...
All your other board members made it on a Friday night, except for you, Mark. Just wanted you to know.
My wife works
Just-
Friday night.
Just wanted you to know.
My wife, well, I can come next time with 4 kids. Would you like that?
Really, I was
I know you
being
were.
very facetious then. It's okay.
So, I really think that, I like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, if anybody wants to add or subtract.
I just take a little shot in the dark, that's all. You know, you're right. We've been talking about this before you came on board, Jim. And hopefully, we'll always have negotiations and we'll always have open communications with our number one taxpayer and be able to help them help us, same thing. I think that the discussion on openness that has happened over the past couple months with our meetings and the public being involved with them, I think it's helped everything, but I absolutely agree that it is now the time that we go into negotiations with, you know, periodic updates from, if it's gonna be Mark, to this board, and that's that. I'm gonna back you up again, and I'm gonna say, I don't wanna see any more in the paper about things. You know, it's funny, because just before I was coming here tonight, I like to okay, I'm gonna say it wrong, DVR, and then I put it onto a CD. So I was watching the January 10th meeting, and we were having that same exact discussion about what, you know, we need newspapers because they will, people that can't watch it right now, they read what Frank has given them, or they go back to the minutes. But to go out and use the media to get your point across, again, everything belongs at this table, whether it's negotiating that's done at this table, or it's an open session, it belongs here, and eventually it needs to come out to all of us. And all of us need to be informed. If there are meetings that are going on, even within the town hall, I'm not even talking about meetings that may happen privately with another entity within town, but meetings that happen at town hall, that information needs to come back to this table too, because you're on a, you know, there's so many things that happen that I feel like I'm reading between the lines sometimes, that some people understand, have had more conversations than I was able to. So I just want to throw that out there too. But I agree with you, Mark. I think it's time for negotiations. I think that Dick seems pumped up for it, so.
Yeah.
And Jim is.
Yes.
So there we go.
Ginny, anything else?
Well, I just think you have to take care of first things first, and I just think we have past business that hasn't been settled, and that's going to be part of the negotiations. That's going to be something that I think for the town, should be negotiated very, very strongly. I really feel that before we go into the future, we have to take care of the past.
We're going to
That's-
muddle it all back together. There's no doubt about it, Jeannie. It's not going to be forgotten about. I just think that it's time to, I think everybody here has a good point. Jim, Dick, everybody, Lorraine, yourself, Linda, Jimmy. And I very much agree with James. I think this whole thing should be settled first, but it's not gonna happen that way. I can read between the lines. But it won't be forgotten when the negotiation team gets together. It's gonna be something that's gonna be, because I was part of that. And to me, it's kind of disturbing because, actually, I don't want to get into that, because it separated us, but it's not gonna happen again. The committee will have our joint negotiations and report back to the board in executive session, the process, because it'll be on the same night, the meetings, I hope, I'm not saying. Then we have our regular meeting, and then we can go into negotiation, into executive session for every meeting. There's something to report. Kevin, hopefully myself, Mr. Gellerman, whoever, will report it to the board. The board will not be left in the dark. I can guarantee you that, if I'm part of this.
Would there'll be a member of Water and Sewer?
At this
One of
point,
the
I
Water
don't
and
think
Sewer
so.
Commissioners? Well, then, how can you be talking about the signs?
Because Dick's well aware of everything that's happening with water and sewer. I don't think it needs, it's the executive board of the town. I think that's the one that's gonna handle this right now. We have a representation from water and sewer right there. He's got his hand on the pulse every day. Kevin is part of those meetings also. I'm just wondering, is there somebody else that you would want to be part of this?
Well, are there going to be zoning changes discussed?
There would be, so I think planning board would
Planning board
be,
should
somebody
be
from the
fine.
planning board would be a very good idea. That's a very good idea, Jenny. I think, so we could make the motion to somebody, 1, 2, 3, and somebody from the planning board. Is there anybody else?
If we're
Mark,
gonna- if we're gonna-
respectfully, I think that we should have Water and Sewer because it's really the same
Well, you
situation.
know, I don't want to get this to be a 7-man committee like I was part of back in the day. I just wanted to be,
7.
yeah, and then a couple alternates. I just think the less people, they got 4, we'll have 4. Let's not make it 15 people and trying to accommodate 100 different schedules, you know? Too many schedule conflicts is what I'm trying to say.
Kevin and Dick, you've been dealing with the water and sewer and going back and forth. We're kind of, because they're separate elected boards, we're just not,
Right,
once in a while, we'll go to the meetings, but we're not kept up to speed. What's your thought on what they're trying to do versus what we're trying to do?
My thought on the nature of the committee, Mark, is to keep it as small as possible.
Correct.
And 3 is as large as we need. We will report, as we report back to this board, we clearly report back to the water and sewer commissioners, so everybody understands the process. This committee has no authority to enter into an
Right.
agreement. None at all. We just have authority to discuss and negotiate. The process is, we then report back to the boards whose interest we're representing. The boards will say, you're out of your mind, forget it, you're not gonna do it. Well, yes, that's a good idea, try and get that. That's the process. There may be times, Mark, when we may need to have someone from water and sewer there as we go forward, and we would certainly invite them to come in. We may need people who are specialists, not necessarily from the board, but from their staff. And Jenny and Lorraine, all issues are open for discussion. There's no intention whatsoever to forget about what happened in the past. That's one of the main matters that we need to discuss. And I meant it when I said, this could be a 1-hour negotiation. It's entirely, I hope not. That's not why we're getting into it, but it could be.
And Dick, the veto power is town meeting. If it's not represented at the town, it's a, and I heed the warning to everybody that it is gonna have to be good for the town, and the townspeople are gonna show up in groves for this, and if they like it, they like it.
So Jim, to answer your question, I would keep it as small as possible, and the 3 would be a good number.
So one selectman and 2,
And Kevin
one
and I
consultant,
is my
one town
suggestion.
employee. You guys think about having one selectman in the committee?
Thought it was going to be Mark.
That's what I'm saying, he is a selectman,
Yeah,
one selectman.
right, yeah.
I'm saying, what do you think about that?
Oh.
Putting the future of our town in Mark's hands?
It's not.
Town
It's in
meeting's
the
hand.
town's
We
hands.
got
Well, you know,
vetoes.
for the
Does he
people at home,
feel-
this,
Does he feel comfortable with that?
I don't think he would have said it if he wasn't comfortable.
I'm very comfortable with Jenny, you know, I'm looking forward to the debate, I really am.
I hope there isn't a lot of debate, that's all I can say, because I didn't take my Friday nights so that you
Can screw it
can
up.
go in there and screw it up, so. You
Well,
four
I got
didn't hear
this
that,
can of
but.
spray at home. Dan might remember from a few other meetings.
Well, I mean, if you go back a little bit, Ginny, you weren't here, but this list, the MOU or what you presented, has been kicking around for almost 2 years now. We've vetted it, and almost got to the point of signature at some level. It's been through the planning board, and it's originated at the water and sewer, but they found out that it was out of their realm, so it got kicked over to us, so.
But it's changed.
It's changed a little
It's
bit, but
morphed
a lot of the
into-
stuff that's in that is still kicking around, and, you know, some of the new stuff, and Ginny, I share your apprehension of having 2 liquor stores down there. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's on the list. That stuff, you know, there's gonna be the good, the bad, the ugly that you gotta juggle through, and some of it will fall out.
And I would think when you did represent this to town meeting, it would be in 5 or 6 different articles. It wouldn't be a group sum. One may be a 6 liquor licenses for serving alcohol restaurants. One might be 2 package store licenses. It gives the town an opportunity to vent it. One might be for zoning changes, you know, I'm sure there's gonna be more than one article on this meeting.
But it doesn't mean that, okay, here you go, here's your 8 licenses right away, kids, and
Nope.
do what you will. Absolutely not. It's
Nope.
just like the 12 licenses that were given up there.
There's no doubt about it.
And, you know, live and learn. There's certain things that they understand now that, you know, fit better than others, and I think they already know that. They've already went, you know, look what we put these folks through for the Trader Joe's. I mean, who knew that it was gonna be that,
Controversial?
yeah, really. So, you know, I think, you know, I think that you're not gonna have a big debate. I think that everybody's gonna do what's right for the town and our neighbor.
Ginny?
The craft group has a list. Do we have a list of
I'm waiting
things
for,
that
I
we?
don't have the list, but I'm waiting for it.
I mean, have we put together a list of what we're looking for?
I actually have an internal list that I put together for myself, yes.
With,
Share it with you?
Well,
no, I
not
mean,
right now.
with
Not right
information
now, thank you.
with information from all, you know, from the selectmen, from water and sewer, from planning, from, you know,
Jenny,
individual.
The answer is, to the extent that hasn't happened, that will happen before we sit down with the craft organization. We'll have a list from your board. I met last week with the water board, but that's how the process works. Before we sit down with them, we know, we have parameters from your board as to what you want considered, what you're willing to accept. Just, if I could just pick an example, you may say, the 5 of you say, forget, I don't know that this will happen, just as an example, forget their plan to put in a tennis complex. Just a dead set against it, don't even bother. We know, going in there, Jim, forget about the tennis complex, not gonna happen. So we don't go in there blind, we go in there with knowledge of what this board, to the extent you can all come together, this board wants, and we go and they say yes, no, I mean, we negotiate it, we come back, we say, look, this is what we think we can accomplish, and you tell us. Do it, don't do it. That's how that works, but
So I can give you my input,
absolutely,
my wish list?
yes.
Would we discuss that in
I would think
executive
it'd be
session?
as a
No,
board.
I mean, there
right?
are ways to do this without violating the open meeting law, and that is, just so you know, each of you independently send me and/or Kevin what issues are of concern to you. You don't share them with one another. We don't share them, excuse me, if you send me a list, I don't send it to you or you. So that when Kevin and I sit down with Mark or whoever it is you put on this committee, we then go over all of your issues. So as long as it's not sequential conversations, as long as it's not, you don't go through us to get to one another, we're not violating the open meeting law to do that. Yes.
So the motion was for you and a planning board member?
Well, no, I asked, Jeannie brought it up, I thought it might be a good idea, but then I'm hearing that these 2 gentlemen don't think it is. They'll have to be debriefed on the whole situation themselves anyways in a joint executive session, so would water and sewer. So my motion would be to allow myself, Kevin Pecos, and Dick Element, and/or special counsel to begin negotiations with the KO group the first Tuesday that we all can agree on as a date.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, further discussion? Under discussion, as chairman of this board, I don't think I can be on that committee because it's two-time committee. It's just too much, and for one chair to be on two committees
Mhm.
like that. Do you have it in you to, this is gonna be a rigorous schedule and a lot of
Yeah,
work?
yeah, I've been through it before. You know what, work's been a little slow. I got the time right now, so I can handle it. But it's gonna, like I said, it can't be one of these situations where it's bouncing all over the place. I want the meetings here at Town Hall, and I insist upon that. Because Kevin has to work out at Town Hall, he's here to 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. It's gotta be kind of on this ground here. No offense, I don't have the time to dedicate more than 2 days a week, 2 nights a week to this, you know, and I don't think anybody does with a standing family and all, so. No, I'm actually looking forward to the challenge.
So motion made, seconded, any more discussion? All those in favor? All right, 5-0 carries. Guys, good luck, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And I meant that, I hope this is a positive experience moving forward, and hopefully you guys get some good stuff, we benefit, and wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Actually, we have 1 left. 3 left.
Yes, yeah,
All right, a couple more action items and then executive session.
Get all that?
Selectmen meeting minutes from August 21st.
You'll be there.
Comments?
Yes, I was.
That's it.
I didn't have anything.
Didn't have anything?
I move that we accept the minutes from August 21st.
Second?
I do have one correction.
Oh.
I abstained. Not I abstained, I recused myself.
I thought it said that in there.
But it says 401, it should be 400, because when you...
One abstaining, right? It's
Oh, 'cause you weren't
401.
even there.
If you recuse yourself, you don't even vote. In other words, if you...
You're right, you're
You can
right.
abstain and participate, but not vote.
Yeah,
So could you
you're
make
right.
those 400 for page 3?
Move to accept as amended.
Second?
Motion made, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
5-0. The Sharon, we covered. Modification of liquor violations, it was a
Yeah.
country store, North Street.
That's
That's
just
one.
just a notification that they're having a hearing.
Yep.
on,
And then the request for alcohol service to begin at 11 a.m. on Patriots home games Sundays, and that's that.
That should be 1 o'clock, James, right?
This just comes up every
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Is
it's
it-
1
We-
o'clock
We do it for
games.
11 o'clock.
For 1
1
o'clock
o'clock
games,
games.
nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah, opening up at 11
For
during
1
the season.
o'clock,
for 1 o'clock
home games. So I would make the motion that Tavelini's Restaurant can open at 11 o'clock a.m. on Page's home games that start at 1 o'clock.
Motion made,
Second?
seconded. Further discussion? Thank you. All those in favor?
All right.
5-0. Thank you, Dick, for coming in. Appreciate it.
Linda, make that motion you're so good at, executive session.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss, what are we discussing? Union negotiations, and we will, come out of executive session only to adjourn.
Roll call.
Linda?
Was it
Oh,
seconded?
seconded by
Yes, second.
Lorraine. Linda?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And yes. Thank you and good evening. Evening, thanks, Frank.
I can't believe it's this late.
What, at 10?
I thought it was like 9 o'clock. I looked up, wow.
Because you're having fun.
Yes or no question.
Sure, sure.
On the town hall project.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago when KB, Castle Brewers folks came in, the same gentleman,
Yeah.
my memory is not clear. Did the Board of Selectmen itself ever decide to go with the replaced town hall?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Took a vote.
took a vote. It wasn't to renovate, it was to knock down and build new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Board of Selectmen, 2 years ago,